All right, so welcome everyone to our salary webinar here today. We're supposed to have our President Matt Peel on, but he had some business or needs to take care of today and was not able to join. So you'll be in good hands with myself and Curt. So Curt, do you want to do a little quick introduction of yourself and your background?
Sure. I've been doing tech staffing for over 3 decades now. I don't like saying 30 years because it makes me sound old, even though I don't feel old. Originally, I was a software developer, did that for many years, and then was recruited to a company to do tech staffing. And that's what I've been doing ever since. I've been here at Impact Business Group for over 3 years now, and I actually know the owners and the whole team here. I worked with them early in my career. So I've seen a lot of different changes in the whole tech staffing space. Happy to be here today and answer any questions.
Yep, and you work with both of our clients as well as candidates, so you get to see both sides of what's going on there.
Yeah, correct. I do what we call full desk.
Yep. So this is an open webinar, and we're encouraging all your questions. So if you have questions as we're going through the event today, feel free to just unmute yourself and chime in. Keep yourself on mute the rest of the time, but feel free to unmute and chime in if you have any questions or comments at all. So before we get started, so if you're not familiar with Impact, we're a staffing agency, and our core areas are IT, engineering, finance, and accounting. We also staff in some other areas such as HR, sales, customer service, project management, and some other sections as well. And we are based out of Grand Rapids, Michigan, and Tampa, Florida, but we do help our clients staff in about 25 plus states. So we're pretty much nationwide in that sense. Um, and we do work with an extensive network of both clients and candidates across the nation, still focused on our two locations, but across the nation, you'll see a little bit later. And we started in 2004. So we've been around for 20 years. So it's our, I guess, anniversary, 2 decades this year. So every year we conduct a salary survey. So we ask our clients and our candidates what's going on their side as far as salary and what's important to them in their job search and candidate search and all those things. So we'll go through all of those insights here as we walk through the webinar, and I'll share with you some of the answers that they gave us to see what your peers are saying is going on for them in the job market. So the first question that we asked is, are you currently employed? And the biggest takeaway that we saw this year is that more people are saying that, no, I'm not employed. And fewer people are saying that they are employed full time. So maybe, Curt, you can talk a little bit about what you're seeing on your end with candidates.
Yeah, we have seen some compression in terms of some of the layoffs that have affected the industry. Tech has been moving slower. So if someone does get hit, unfortunately, with a layoff, it may take longer for them to bounce back into the active work side of the house. And so it's hard to really draw any hard and fast conclusions other than the pool of candidates that and individuals that responded this time may have a different background mix in terms of where they're at in their career and what's going on with their particular employer. But it was an interesting jump this time around in terms of who was responding.
Yep. And just to give you an idea of the people that did respond back and their experience level, well, you see most of them are mid to senior level staff, and that kind of makes sense because that's a big bulk of the type of roles that we do staff for. And then it was pretty evenly spread across the entry to mid-level and management, and then a smaller chunk there on executive management. So does that align with the type of job roles too that you work on, Curt?
Yeah, I would say that that's accurate. It's the mid-level staff level positions that have the highest volume in any organization. And we do talk to a lot of those folks. Folks at the entry level, we don't do as much there. That's usually a unique scenario if we're asked to help at that part of someone's career. Senior level roles, we're always happy to work on those. But as people go through their career progression, there are fewer and fewer of those roles available. That's just the nature of how companies organize their internal structure. So I'd
Yep.
say this is consistent.
Yep. And one of the questions that we received before the webinar started as people are signing up was if there's an opportunity for advancement. So since we're in this on this slide here, maybe you can talk real brief about if somebody wants to move from entry to mid-level or mid-level to senior to management, like what are the current opportunities that you're seeing right now and a good way to approach that?
Yeah, I would still say that they're good. What we've been noticing, and it's been a trend for a while now, is that the baby boomers have been continually retiring, and we have not always seen good succession planning done by our clients. So some of the more junior folks in recent years have had accelerated opportunities to move into leadership. Um, in the senior leadership roles, that kind of comes in waves and cycles. You'll have a number of folks that are peers that all tend to retire together, and then you'll see a shift of staff moving up, and then the leadership roles will go quiet for a while. So there's definitely room for growth. It's just a matter of how much patience you have and how much time you want to invest in a given employer for that. That's still one of the primary drivers where people move between roles anywhere from 2 to 3 and 3 to 5 years is to move into an environment where they can get more growth potential, both for income as well as career responsibilities. They're out there. It's just you have to be active and looking for them.
And we also asked people for their recent job titles. So I'm just going to throw this up there. You can take a look. And the most common one was that people are in some sort of management role out of the people that responded back. But aside from that, it's pretty much across the board, all the way from customer service to engineer and accountants and all across the board. So as I mentioned on the outset, our core areas are IT, engineering, finance, accounting, and the biggest bulk, not by much, but a little bit, is engineering. So that's where we're seeing a lot of activity over the last few months. And Curt, you're on the IT side, so maybe you can talk about that a
Oh,
little bit.
sure.
Yep. But that's the spread of the demographics that people are in. And as I mentioned, too, our two locations are Grand Rapids, Michigan, and Tampa, Florida. So that's where you'll see the bulk of the candidates that we work with, as well as the opportunities for jobs that we have available. But we do staff across the nation, so you'll see a lot of other states being represented on there. So anything else that you'd like to add on that, Curt?
Yeah, I would just say engineering has been by far much more active in the last year than, say, the tech sector or the accounting sector. So there's been definite good growth there, despite anything that the media is saying about recessions and whatnot. Our manufacturing and engineering customer base has been super active, so far more active than our technology group.
Yep. And the type of job roles that we see there can range anywhere from like technician, entry level type of stuff, all the way up to engineering managers and those types of roles. And as far as job experience, this ties into one of the previous slides there with mid to senior level staff being more common. And you can see that almost half of the clients that we work with or candidates that we work with have about 15 plus years of experience. So you can see there's the spread right there. And this one was kind of interesting. So where do you work? So we've seen a lot of people have moved to either fully remote or hybrid the last few years. During COVID, especially a lot of people work remote. But we've seen a little bit of a shift back to on-site this year. You can see that that side has grown a little bit. And I was anticipating that the remote would go down and go to on-site, but it's actually been the people on hybrid that's been going back on site fully. So maybe Curt, you can add some of your insights on that, the candidates and clients that you work with.
Yeah, that's a standard question we have with our clients when filling a role is, what is the work model they're using? And if it's hybrid, we want to know how many days per week they expect in the office. And that has definitely gone up from what we've seen since COVID. Early on, it was fewer days in the office, more work from home, and it has done a subtle shift the other way around for those folks that are doing hybrid. It's still one of the biggest requests we have from candidates is either full remote or hybrid, but with limited on site, or at least flexibility in how you schedule your work week, as long as you're getting your work done.
Yep. And speaking of that, that was one of the questions that we had. Is if you are remote or hybrid, how often do you actually have to be on site? So about 35 almost percent said never. And then the most common model after that is that people come in a few days a week. And then we had a smaller group that would say maybe several times a month or occasionally when required. So we do have some fully remote jobs where it'll still say you might still have to come in for a quarterly meeting or something like that. So is that what you're seeing with your opportunities too, Curt?
Yeah, I would say that the employers are more overt now than they have been in the past, in that if you are going to work remote, they may want you to be on site the first week or first 2 weeks. And then they always want the option that if something really needs everybody together, that you have flexibility to come on site if it's absolutely needed. But that is being pushed more in terms of how we're supposed to filter who's interested in a role or not, is having more of that flexibility for on site, especially if it's needed.
And this one is got a lot of things going on this slide was the best way we could
It's
figure out how to put it together. So I'll
it's
let you,
busy.
yeah, I'll let you take it, Curt. Here, I thought we were breaking down the remote versus on-site, and obviously for just a couple of observations for engineering, it's a lot more on-site because this the way the job is, it's not as easy to do remote. Whereas IT, Curt, you can talk about this, is lends itself more to remote work. So what do you see that looking like? Are more IT folks still staying remote, or are they going more on-site, what you're seeing?
I think it would tie back to the earlier slide where we show that it's increased in terms of on-site, but still hybrid is very, very common. And if you have a unique location, in order to stay competitive with the marketplace, those employers have realized they have to be more flexible about how much time is spent on site or not. I think the interesting thing, even though this graph is very busy, is just we're trying to break down and show you any changes that have happened in the different sectors we support: IT, engineering, and accounting, and then the other areas that might include customer service and some of those clerical roles.
Yep. Do we have any questions so far, by the way, before we move on to the next slide? Okay. So, another thing we wanted to find out is what do people feel about their work arrangement, whether they're remote, on-site, or hybrid. And it hasn't changed too much from this year to last year. And the people that are remote, 80% of them are pretty positive about that model, whereas the people that are on-site said 15%, 16% feel good about that. So not a big surprise. People working remote, pretty happy about it. People that have to go into the office, not as much. And the hybrid workers are falling somewhere there in between. And then how many jobs have you applied for in the last 90 days? So we're just seeing fewer people are saying that they're not applying for jobs, and we're seeing an increase in people that are applying for jobs. And the next slide will break it down a little bit by area. So this one, you want to talk about this one, Curt? I thought this one was
Yeah.
pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's another busy graph, but it just ties to how active are people being in the job market. And in some cases, what it means is because there aren't as many positions or firms aren't moving as quickly as they were in the past, you have to apply to more positions than you did in the past to get activity going for something you might be interested in. So people who want to make a move are definitely looking. A lot of different factors driving that.
Yep. And especially on the category that's other, I'll clarify that we're seeing a big jump. Uh, people applying for jobs, and those would be the customer service type of jobs, admin assistant, those office type of clerical type of jobs. A lot people have to apply for more, uh, and we'll get a little bit more into that in the later slides when we get into the more detailed salary parts. I'll show that a bit more in detail. And then, so this is maybe a little bit for the employers who are crafting job postings. Here's what people said that they are looking for in the job posting when they're applying for jobs. Maybe Curt, you can break it down a little bit, what you try to put in your job postings and what you find important and what seems to resonate with candidates.
Yeah, we try to do a less is more approach wherever we can, less fluff in terms of trying to make the job sound over the top exciting and more focus on the things that are listed here as important. You know, what is the title of the role? And hopefully it's a neutral title because everybody can call the same position 10 different things. That compensation is listed, although that is a challenge because compensation models are varying widely right now between base plus bonus plus equity. So you have to hit some realistic number in terms of helping individuals understand what the employer can potentially do. Bonus is hit or miss because it varies so much per company. But we do try to net it out in terms of the duties, you know, what work model is being used. What we're trying to do in our posting is give everybody as clear as possible an idea of what is the role we're working on. And we will start with a client's, say, job description, and then we have to, you know, filter it down from there, and then use details we've learned when we talk to the hiring manager to try and give an even clearer picture of what we're working on. The idea is we want everybody to be as efficient as possible, apply to those roles that sound really good to you so that we can aim for the bullseye as opposed to just trying to see how many resumes can be submitted on a given opening. Our model's more qualitative than quantitative in that respect.
Yep. And we received a question from Dwayne. This was during the sign-up process. So I don't know if Dwayne is on with us or not, but he is asking about, so you mentioned about compensation can be constructed in different ways. So salary, bonus, profit sharing, 401k, and so on. So he's asking when is a good time to get more detailed information on that. So I think what he's meaning there is in the interviewing process, maybe when is a good time to start having that discussion.
Yeah, what we want to do up front in terms of our goals, being a staffing company, is we want to make sure that the compensation model being used would be attractive to every candidate that we talk to. And we may never know up front the exact mix that a manager puts together if it's a compensation model using different pieces. But what we do is set an expectation with our client that this individual is looking for a package in this neighborhood. And we try to be general up front. What we want to basically assess is, can this company afford to hire you? And can you afford to work for this company? And if we know that up front, you know, that the numbers overlap to a degree, what we try to do is focus more on the actual then match to the job and match to the team, where compensation is discussed later in the process once both sides get to know each other and then have that gut level feel that they want to work together. It's kind of negotiation 101. If you use money right up front, it's a very easy number to completely shut down what could be a perfectly good career match for someone. And by the time you've gotten to know an employer and they've gotten to know you, that's actually the best time to then fine tune where the compensation is going to come in. So if you want my opinion, it's better to know up front, one, can we afford to work together, and then focus on all the other aspects of the match to the job, and then bring up compensation in more detail once both parties have decided, yeah, we want this to work. We think this is a good match. But that's where we help facilitate that as well.
Yep. And then along the same lines, we asked what the most important job satisfaction factors are. And so salary was to no surprise number one. And then fairly evenly divided between the other. Work from home flexibility is always important. That went down a little bit from last year. Company culture, so on. So is there anything else that you see as people being really passionate about as far as job satisfaction outside of the salary part?
Yeah, I think stability right now is the big question. Folks are tired of the layoffs that they've been hearing about and seeing, and folks who are still looking between roles are getting weary in terms of their job search efforts. So I would say stability of the employer in the role is up there right now with compensation. But compensation leads just because of some of the inflationary pressures we're all seeing.
Okay. And then for career plans, Um, we're just seeing a lot more people, like we're saying earlier, people are looking for new opportunities. And yeah, they're out there looking for jobs. And then for compensation range, what we're seeing here is a little bit of a shift. So the people making less than 75,000 is going up a little bit. And then the 75,000 and higher is coming down a bit. So Curt, is that what you're seeing as well?
Yeah, I would say we are seeing some salary compression. What we think has happened is when we came out of COVID, a lot of corporations had what they thought was at least a year's worth of pent-up demand. And so employers were much more aggressive in what they're willing to offer to attract talent. And since we're past the main issues of COVID and things have settled down a fair amount in that respect, employers are being a little pickier in terms of who they're going to hire, and the salaries we're seeing offered are definitely lower than just right after COVID. So it's kind of college level economics too. When demand is way up and supply is down, the salary levels get elevated. But now that things are more stable and there's more people in the market due to some of the layoffs, the salaries being offered are a little bit lower. And then we are seeing some firms that we think are adjusting their headcount because they overhired and they overcompensated back when we came out of COVID. So things are more conservative right now in terms of new offers coming out.
Yep. And you can see the breakdown by career field here, that 50,000 and lower, that you have the other uh, customer service, admin type of roles. Whereas on the IT side, that's where you're seeing the six-figure higher type of salary ranges, and then fairly evenly split between the other 50 to 99, with the exception of, again, the other area kind of drops off a little bit as you get into the higher ranges. And then we asked this last year, and we asked for the first time after COVID, and this year again, has your salary been adjusted for inflation? And fairly evenly, slightly up this year, but for the most part, it's been no, with about 20, a little over 20% said yes. And then what sort of salary increase would you need to receive to make a job change? And last year, people were pretty optimistic. They wanted at least 20%. And then this year that's shifted a little bit. So we're seeing a big increase of people saying, if I get a 5% increase, I'm good, and I'll take it. So we're seeing a little bit of a shift, a little tightening of salaries this year. So that's been one change. And then have you worked with a staffing agency before? Um, and I'll let you take this one, Curt.
Yeah, what we can see here is, roughly 80% of the folks out there have worked with a staffing agency of one sort or other before. We were really curious about the ones who've never worked with a staffing firm, for obvious reasons, since that's what we do for a living. And, some of the misconceptions that they had was, well, if I work with a staffing company, part of my salary is going to go to the staffing company instead of myself, which is actually not true in the majority of cases. The starting salary is the basis for how we compute our placement fees, but it's completely separate from your own compensation. And generally, what we do is use a percentage with our clients that's pre negotiated. So the beauty is the higher the offer for you, the higher the fee that we would charge for our services. If somebody's very junior in their career, their salary will be lower, and so the fee would be lower. So it self-regulates for the level of experience of the individual being placed, but there is no cost to the candidate when working with a normal, contingency search staffing company. Um, some other misconceptions were that the benefits aren't as good and or the compensation won't be as good, and really that's not the case either. Our clients come to us basically because they are not finding who they're looking for. And they do know that they have to offer a competitive wage if someone's going to accept the position. The benefits are always going to be the same at an employer, whether an agency is involved in the position or not. Some other things that people have said is, Candidates have their own network they like to tap into, and that's great if you can make that work, but not everybody has a deep enough network to get access to the positions that we work on.
Okay, and for the trends, like I said, we're seeing more applicants than we've seen in the last few years. So people are looking for work, and then also tightening of salaries due to increased job seekers in the market. And we're seeing a little bit of a shift from hybrid and a little less remote, but hybrid going back into the office and working. So those are the three trends that we're seeing so far. And let's hop over to, let's see here. So we wanted to show you some actual salary data. So are you able to see this screen here?
Yep, it came up.
Okay. So we're going to send this out. So we're not going to read every single thing on here, but just wanted to show you a little bit about here's some of the average salaries for the most popular roles that we work on. So we got software developer, system administrator, data engineer, project manager, and business analyst. So you can get a feel for the average salary. And these are the numbers from Indeed. So these are the live numbers from the last month or so. And you can see too how many jobs are open for each one and applicants per job and then the top employers. So these are the top 5 employers hiring for these types of roles. So we'll send this out so you can take a look at it. It'll have for IT, and then we have engineering, also for Grand Rapids. So you can see applicants per job varies from about 10, 20 up to 30, 50, 80. Just depends on the job role. And then we got the accounting finance jobs as well. So you can see kind of ranges and varies a little bit on the number of applications and salaries depending on the job and the level of experience that you're bringing to the job as well. So Curt, anything you'd like to add to these more in-depth salaries that we're looking at? And I will send all these out so you can take a look at them a little bit more in depth afterwards.
No, I would just say that on a per position basis or posting basis, that's where you need to focus. This is an aggregate, that comes from Indeed. But on any of our individual postings, you'll see a better picture of the salary potential for that specific role. And it's generally tied to experience level and then any specialization that a candidate has in their background.
Yep. So one of the questions that came from Joe was how to determine salary according to the market. So going on a site like Indeed, salary.com is a good place to go and find that type of information. If you're a client and a company looking to hire and you're looking for a more in-depth analysis of a particular job that you're hiring for, we'll be happy to provide you with a custom salary report where we can go in a little bit more in detail and provide you with some salary details on that particular role and our recommendation based on what we're seeing as well. So any last thoughts there, Curt, from you?
No, I think the important point is to realize it's not carte blanche out there in terms of employers offering, really high salaries right now. So it requires some flexibility. So if right after COVID, you got one of those juicy roles that was being funded by venture capital and you're making twice what you were before COVID, that is pretty much gone from the marketplace. So if you're now in between roles, you have to be a little more flexible in terms of that base salary. The employers are going to look at their internal equity, their core staff already doing the job, and that's how they're going to come up with the salaries they want to post. And then what we do is help our clients where they may be missing the mark, where the market is still being very competitive in a given segment. So
Yep.
flexibility on both sides